So I don't want things that offend me to have power over me. I want to have power over them, which I think means having intellectual distance and using my intellect as a distancing tool. You know, to paraphrase Nietzsche, who said things that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, I think that what doesn't offend me makes me stronger, or what does offend me and I'm able to overcome the offense makes me stronger. So I just don't think that I have to succumb to what offends me. I would rather use my intellect as my own form of weapon. You know, I hear a lot about movements on campus to eliminate offense these days, and I actually take the opposite view. I'm somebody who has written a lot about offense, and I've sort of taken the opportunity to become offended and subject myself to offense and written about it, and it's been actually a really creative and intellectually interesting experience for me. I wrote quite a long time ago about Hustler magazine, and I had decided to write about it. I got a copy of Hustler, I looked at it, and I was so offended I actually had to throw it out. And then at some point I decided to go back to it, and I looked at it more closely, and I started to realize that the things that were offending me about it were the ways that it defied my own boundaries and proprieties. So, for example, when you start looking at it more closely, you realize that it's using disgust, and particularly bodily disgust, as a sort of attack on class proprieties, on bourgeois proprieties, on forms of elitism and power, entrenched power. So it's actually using disgust in this very political way as an attack upward. And it's a form of political speech. And as I started investigating more about the ways that obscenity has been used historically as an attack on elites, I mean, going back to satirists like Rabelais or Swift, I became really interested in offense and grossness of the type that Hustler deploys. And of course, in writing this way, I was taking on a kind of feminist establishment. The politics at the time were leaning more toward anti-pornography, and here I was saying that pornography was this interesting form to look at. But what I also realized was that the ways that it offended me had a lot to do with my own boundaries. I mean, some of that had to do with gender, some had to do with class, with the ways that I had been raised and the manners that had been instilled in me. Historically, campuses have been places where the intellect reigned and people were talking at an intellectual distance about the subjects that they were taking on. And over maybe the last, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years, particularly under the auspices of identity politics, where people started to do work that was based more on personal experience and on their own particular identities, particularly minority identities, gender, sexuality, disabilities. People were writing about their own experiences. And this created a different kind of atmosphere on campuses. If somebody's writing about their own experience, it's a bit more difficult to talk in critical ways about that work or talk about it at a distance without seeming to offend the person whose work it is and whose experience is being drawn on.